Hi, everybody. My name is Wim, and I'm a friend of your teacher, Mr. Sheila to you, Gerry to me. And I live in Belgium, as I think he told you guys. Now, he asked me if I could do a video just saying hello and talking about some things. And I said, sure, why not? So this is something new for me because I'm not used to talking to American students. So we'll see how that goes. Now, um, well, Mrs. Sheila asked if we could talk a little bit about communication and how you learn from each other. I'm going to try to do that as best as I can and make a few points. However, before we get started, some important information. Um, it's Belgian fries, it's not French fries. Even the French admit that fries are Belgian. So when you guys talk about French fries, I don't know what you're on about because over here we know it's Belgium, right? So that's one. Two, there's nothing wrong with putting mayonnaise on fries. It's actually quite nice, so you should try it. Three, what you guys claim is Belgian waffles is not what we eat over here. I've been to the US many times. I've been to waffle houses, I've been to breakfast places and ordered Belgian waffles. Well, Belgian. Um, the kind of stuff you guys put over there on what looks like waffles isn't really what we do. So, um, I would suggest the following. What you guys need to do is get a degree, make enough money so you can travel to Belgium, and then try the fries we have, try the waffles, and obviously try the chocolate as well. And you'll see that there's a whole new world to experience out there. Okay, so talking about sharing information and communicating, I think I just covered the most important parts. Moving on to being a little bit more serious now. Mr. Sheila and I have known each other for many years. Despite the fact that we've only met once in real life, we've been friends for I think about 15 years now, maybe even longer. Now, it all started as we had a very heated argument, and mostly heated on my part, not on his part. A heated argument about martial arts a long time ago on an email list. So it's kind of like a Facebook group or a Facebook page where people are trolling and doing lots of let's say lots of comments that aren't necessarily all that productive. We were arguing about martial arts, and I was very convinced of my point of view, and Mr. Sheila actually countered it with arguments and so on, and that went on for such a long time that other people said, "Guys, knock it off. Just take it off this email list and do it privately." Um, I learned a lot from that discussion. So, and one of the things, and remember to this day, is when Mr. Sheila wrote, like, okay, when we were kind of wrapping it up, like, okay, this is as far as we were going to get with the discussion. And he said, look, this was great. The value of the discussion lies in the exchange and not in the fact that you can convince the other party of you being right and her being wrong. And that's something that stuck with me because it made me realize that I needed to be more open minded and that I was stuck in my emotional state when we were arguing about, no, I am right and I will show you I'm right and for this and this reason. And I was too much in that kind of mindset um, for me to actually be open to the arguments that he was making. And I was proven right that I was wrong in my mindset because many years later, when we kind of revisited that discussion a little bit, it turns out that we were much closer to each other's point of view than I actually realized. So the result was that there was a whole lot of energy that I wasted arguing with him. Where if I would have been more open-minded, then we couldn't gotten that to that constructive part a whole lot quicker. So how awesome would that have been for me? So um, my point is this: if you focus on that exchange, you never lose. If you focus on we're arguing, we're discussing, it can actually be heated. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you stay respectful and polite. But there can be some emotion in there. But you're listening to the other person, and instead of what many people do, waiting for the other person to listen while already forming the sentences in your head that you will then use to show them how wrong they are. That's not a discussion. That's you doing a monologue while there's somebody present, because you're just talking and the other person, whatever they're saying, you're not listening. So there's no value in that, in my opinion. Um, the thing that I also learned from that argument we had is that for him to be right and me to be wrong, that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm stupid. We can actually both be right at the same time. Just because we look at things differently, we might have a different take on things, and turns out that we're both right in our point of view, but they contrast each other because we're coming at it from a different angle. So if you can accept that two people can be right at the same time, I think you have an advantage over people who can't understand that, because nobody knows everything. And that's one of the key things. You have to understand that nobody knows everything. And the point of learning is that you keep on improving who you are, what you can do. You keep on getting more knowledge, so you can be better at what you do, because the world constantly changes. That's the key point. There's no end to knowledge. It's not like you can study everything that is in the world right now today, as far as information is concerned, and then aha, I know everything. I'm done. Nope. Because the day after, some scientist is going to discover something else, something new is going to happen, and you get to learn that stuff too. So there's no end point to it. So what that means is that the world will always be very interesting because it's constantly changing. So that's pretty cool. Um, the other thing is that you have to learn to get perspective. And I will share the link with Mr. Sheila, and you can look it up. There's somebody, they made this really fun drawings of what it means to get a PhD. So that's a higher degree. Now, when you go to that website, what you'll see is that he made a number of circles. So he starts with a big circle, and he says, "This is all the knowledge that human beings have right now. It's everything we know." Now you go to elementary school, and then you're in the middle of that circle with all the knowledge, and it's a really small blue circle, and then you learn a bunch of stuff. And eventually, when you go to you finish high school, um, he draws a green circle around the blue one, and then you know a bunch more. And then you, for instance, you go to get a bachelor degree, and then you specialize in something. You can't have a bachelor degree in everything. You specialize. You pick a subject like, okay, this is what interests me. I'm going to go for that. And then you see that it's no longer a circle that gets bigger, but it just starts to narrow the field that he draws, and it goes into a specific direction. So that means you're starting to specialize. And then you get a master's degree, and then you go even further towards a specific point because you're specializing even more. And then you do a lot of work and a lot of studying and training and so on. And eventually you get to the boundary of human knowledge on something very, very, very specific. And when you get your PhD, that's when you push that boundary a little bit further, because you have now contributed to the whole of human knowledge. So you've added something that wasn't there before, and that's your PhD thesis that you wrote. Now, the point of that those drawings, what I think is, you really have to watch those, and it makes perfect sense then, is that when you watch that big circle from the beginning and the little tiny bump that you made into it, increasing the size of the circle of all the knowledge because you did your PhD. Um, the point is that look at everything else that is there that you don't know. You don't know anything about that. So you're hyper specialized in whatever topic that it may be. You can get a law degree, you can become a doctor, doesn't matter. Well, if I get a law degree and I hyper specialize in, for instance, maritime law, which is very specific, it's very different from, let's say, criminal law, totally different. Um, and then I go talk to a brain surgeon. Well, we're both maybe smart people, but I don't know anything about operating somebody with a brain tumor, and he doesn't know anything about how to get a ship that is on lockdown in some harbor, how to get it free, filing the legal papers that are necessary. We're both smart, but we don't know anything about what the other does because he is in a completely different spot in that big circle of human knowledge than I am. And if you can acknowledge that, I think it's much easier to then not taking things personally when you communicate and when you discuss things, and actually end up learning more. And I think that's the really interesting part. But that's difficult. It's and I wasn't able to do that first, and it's thanks to Mr. Sheila, among other people, that I learned that to be, to accept a little bit better that I don't really have to know everything. And few years later on, stuff happened in my life and so on. I encountered many other people also showing me how little I actually knew. And I thought I knew a lot, but I was wrong. Um, so I learned to say three things that I think everybody needs to be able to say without reservation, without getting upset about it, without begrudging the other person that you have to say it. And that is, I don't know, I was wrong, I'm sorry. If you can say these three things easily, then I think you really have an advantage over the vast majority of everybody else that is out there. Because there is so much that you don't know. I don't know. You have to be able to admit it. But doesn't mean that you don't know anything. It's just that that particular thing you don't know. I was wrong. You might be arguing a certain point, and then the other person who's actually more specialized in that field than you are can show you with logic, with reasoning, with factual information that, well, actually he's right and you're not. And then you say, like, okay, it's fine. I was wrong. I thought I was right. You showed me I was wrong. Perfect. Moving on. And then finally, being able to say that you're sorry is one of the key things in life, because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that afterwards we say, like, okay, I shouldn't have said that. I thought I was right, but I was really wrong here. And I didn't know what I was talking about. Then you apologize to the other person for actually not acting in the way that you should have. And that creates goodwill. That leaves the door open for that person to still communicate with you. Because here's the thing: when you have this heated discussion, you have an argument. Um, you know that what it's like. You're arguing real hard, and the other person too is getting emotional. And at a certain point, you actually realize, oh no, I'm wrong here. I really don't know what I was saying, and I'm actually wrong. And it's hard to come to that point and then admit to yourself, like, okay, I'm wrong, and then say it publicly, like, hold on, time out, I just realized that you're right. That's very difficult at first, and it takes an effort, but with practice you get better at it. Especially if, like I said, if it's getting heated, it's very difficult. But if you can do that, you get a lot further in life than the people who can't, because, like I said, you realize that you were wrong, but the other people often also realize that, and they'll look at you and see what you're doing. And if they see that you can admit being wrong, well, they might look at you in a different way, in a more negative way, than if they can see that you have the courage and to admit you made a mistake or you were wrong, and you're secure enough to say that to the other person, even if it's a heated exchange. Well, what happens is that you're going to end up finding more people around you who also think like that. And these kind of people generally are the ones that lift you up in life, as opposed to the ones that drag you down with a lot of drama. So that's why I think communicating openly is very important, and it's a skill that we need to learn. And it's not easy. So you have to be honest with yourself and other people, and then it can become a constructive discussion. Now, when all you want to do is convince the other person that you're right and that they're wrong, you don't really want to discuss anything then. Then you just want to win. And it's fine by me if you want to do that, but then there's nothing for you to learn. Because if you just want to win, then it's the mindset of, well, I already know everything and I'm always right. If you can't accept that sometimes you're wrong, well, you're going to end up in a very different place than if you can easily say that. Now, for me, how that turned out in my life, I'm 47 years old now, is that most of my friends are smarter than me, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And I think that's awesome. Mr. Sheila is much smarter than me. I think I'm better looking, but he's much smarter. Now, he also knows a lot more about certain things, like, for instance, history. He knows a lot more than I do, and I find that fascinating. So we discussed history and many other things very often online. And I learned something pretty much every time we talk a little bit more in depth about subjects. I've got a friend who's a rocket scientist who is actually a part of a team that did a little piece of a satellite that will be sent into space, and it's going to replace the Hubble telescope, which is something you can find online as well. So, and he's genius level smart. I've got another friend. He's a professor in chemistry, and he knows stuff that that to me just blows my mind because I don't really understand how that works, and he could just explain that easily. So a lot of my friends are really, really smart people, and they are smart in a field that I know nothing of, or that I am very limited in my knowledge. And then I can learn about what they do and actually understand the world a whole lot better than if I wouldn't have those friends. Now, if I were the kind of person who wouldn't want to listen to what they have to say, and just because I read something online or read something on Wikipedia, I think that I know everything there is to know about that subject. And then I talk to somebody who is the genius level rocket scientist, and I'm talking to him about how the universe works and how the laws of physics work. And he hears me spouting nonsense. He's going to think like, well, okay, I'm not going to talk to this guy because he's too far gone in his own world, and he knows I'm wrong. But he's likely not even going to bother talking to me anymore, and that's my loss. So anyway, that's how I see things. This went a little bit longer than I thought. I hope you guys find this useful. Um, and I did my best to not say anything that got Mr. Sheila fired. I hope I succeeded. That's it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Okay, take care. Bye bye.